One of the primary things that Israel was consistently punished for was idolatry, right? Like they were constantly going and worshiping other things. In verse 7, it says he spoke to them from the pillar of cloud. They kept his statutes and the decrees he gave them. It says, Lord our God, you answered them. You were to Israel a forgiving God, though you punished their misdeeds. Exalt the Lord our God and worship at his holy mountain, for the Lord our God is holy. Right? So we understand this aspect of worship as a lifestyle, right? Like we know people like music, people like the praise and different things like that, but truly understanding the core of what worship is in the eyes of the Father, right? That obedience from a pure place. You worship what you trust. You worship what you trust, right? So one of the primary things that Israel was consistently punished for was idolatry, right? Like they were constantly going and worshiping other things. They were worshiping the sun and the moon and the stars. They were worshiping these people and that. Like everything that he said don't do, they did. But them obeying these other things, them submitting to the ways of these other peoples and these other nations, them submitting to all of these different forms of being, ultimately equated in a form of worship to the Father. And that's why he called them adulterers and adulteresses. That's why he said they were in idolatry. They were worshiping strange things, right? So this aspect of worship from a pure place and really living a lifestyle that is purely submitted to the Father, when we like what I mentioned, like we worship what we trust. When we trust the Father at his word, when we trust him for who he is, when we trust the testimonies that have been recorded that he has done in the past, we worship him and we obey him because we know that this is true. That's why I don't worship horoscopes, right? I don't care how many people say it's true and different things like that. The scriptures, he already said that we don't do that. Don't worship me in that way, right? Don't look to the stars in the heavens for a sign and different things like that. He's already told us that, right? But people who trust their horoscopes, they worship those things. They check like their daily devotion. They wake up in the morning and they check the horoscopes to see what the day is going to be like. They meet an individual instead of leaning on the Holy Spirit to discern the individual and test them against the measure of the word of the Father. They go and they'll read this. Oh, what's your sign? And they'll read a horoscope to discern that individual and see how their sign interacts with their sign, to see what type of friendship or relationship they're going to have. And they yield to the spirits that control those things in a form of worship, right? They obey that thing. So when they check their daily horoscope or their daily reading, they're like, oh, today's going to be a good day. They live in a manner that shows they believe that, and today might turn out to be a good day. If it says they're going to have problems, they yield to that, say, okay, and they already start to live and operate in a manner that shows they submitted to that. So now they're looking and expecting, and they're pretty much, without realizing that, they're obeying the very thing they read, and ultimately it will create what it is they're doing because they're yielding to the spirit that's over that thing, if that makes sense. But I'm using that as an example to show these different patterns and how it all connects together as far as like what worship is, and when it comes down to recognizing how worship is another tool of warfare for the believer, we have to understand what that looks like and what that means, right? And